Trey, if you look at the math, you should win handily if just the number of Republicans that came out in the primary. And if you look at the money, you've way out fundraised your opponent. Is this going to be a cakewalk for you?
I'm focused on taking the message to voters every single day. The fact that we deserve and demand real change in Washington. I'm excited about getting that real change for them, informed by my genuine business experience, creating jobs in Indiana for the last 11 years. So it's about, for me, talking to each individual voter and helping them understand that I want to get them involved. I want to get them off the sidelines. We have got to fix this government, and we are only going to do it if we get everybody committed to that change.
Back to the obvious math, though. 120,000 Republicans came out in the primary.
Right.
60-some thousand Democrats came out.
Right.
Your opponent says that it's not about that she's going to do like what you said and try to work every voter.
Right.
But the math has to make you feel a little confident.
Well, I tell you what I want to do is talk to those voters and get everybody involved. I want to get people the results. So, look, it's not about confidence. It's about being a humble public servant. It's about talking to people about what I can do to get obstacles out of their way and enable opportunities for them. So to me, rather than look at the big picture, it's about the small picture. What can I do for that person in Seymour? What can I do for that person in Johnson County? What can I do for that person in Floyd County? It is about having those conversations that matter most to me.
You're going to have that conversation with about 67% of Republicans who didn't vote for you in the primary. How do you win over those? Because you had a very split primary.
Right.
You roughly 33% of the vote came to you, 35% of the vote. How are you going to win over the Republicans who didn't support you in the primary? Because there were a lot of them.
Right. It's a great question. I think what they understand now is we are in a contest of ideology. My opponent embraces Obamacare. My opponent is a tax and spend politician. My opponent continues to espouse a weak foreign policy that Hillary Clinton's put forth. They understand that this is not about personality. This is about ideology. And I have the fortunate circumstance that I've had an ultra-liberal opponent that focuses on those wrong answers. And I think Republicans all the way across the district understand we have got to get this country back on track. In order to get those results, we need individuals that are committed to public service, committed to the right principles.
Your opponent, you call her an ultra-liberal, but she agreed with Donald Trump in that if a company like Carrier is to leave the country, you should tax the heck out of their product when they come back. How do you... That's not the view of an ultra-liberal.
Well, I tell you what. Well, I think it is of the view. Her first response always is to raise taxes. That's what she's done in Monroe County time and time again.
That's what Donald Trump was saying you should do to a company like Carrier. When they send their product back into the United States, you should tax the heck out of them when they come back.
Well, of course Shelley Yoder says that she should raise taxes. That's what she's done in Monroe County over and over again. What I want to do, because I believe in the American worker, because I know they're the most productive, innovative workers around the world, I want to take the rocks out of their backpack. I want to remove Obamacare. I want to remove regulation. I want to get back to a tax code that works so that we are the most competitive country around the world. So we are the place that people invest money, so that we are the place where American businesses expand. We can only do that by becoming that shining example of free markets enterprise again. We cannot do that by continuing to raise taxes as my opponent has constantly espoused.
So if a company were to leave Indiana and go to a foreign market, you wouldn't want to raise taxes on their imports to punish them for having left the state of Indiana.
What I want to do is create the environment where that doesn't happen. We believe and know that the American worker is so productive. The American worker is so innovative. The American worker continues to outwork other countries. The problem is we've got politicians in Washington who don't understand business. They don't have any experience in business, but they claim they'll figure it out when they cross the Potomac. That's why we have $20 trillion in debt. That's why we have a tax code that doesn't work. That's why we're seeing companies go abroad. What I do differently is I have 11 years of building businesses. I have 11 years of job creation right in the state of Indiana. Having worked there for the last 11 years, I understand how we create jobs, and I want to continue to see us put forth policies that keep companies here, not continue to tax companies and drive them overseas.
You brought up the fact that you've been doing business in Indiana for 11 years. You've not been living in Indiana for 11 years, though. And that's become an issue in the primary, and Shelley Yoder's already trying to make it an issue when it comes to the general election. What do you say to those who say, you may have been doing business here for 11 years, but you were just making money in Indiana. You didn't have a stake, you didn't have a home here in Indiana 11 years ago.
Well, I tell you what, she continues to try to distract voters from the real issue. And the fact is, the 9th District is hiring somebody to be their representative in Washington. And what they are focused on, what I hear every day when I knock doors, what I hear every day when I make phone calls to voters is we need the right experience in Washington, genuine business experience that I've built in Indiana over the last 11 years through 9 different companies that I've built in Indiana. And we need the right vision for getting back to a constitutional government, getting back to a government that serves the people of this country. Washington has gotten us no real results. And I want to get results from Washington, and how to do that is through genuine experience that I've built in Indiana over the last 11 years. So she's trying to distract voters from the real issue, talk about the past. I'm talking about where we're going in the future to get to a better place for Americans and Hoosiers.
Do you consider yourself a Hoosier?
Absolutely. I'm a proud Hoosier, and I'm excited to carry the trust of many other Hoosiers to Washington to focus on getting those real results we all demand and expect.
You know what she says, and she told us that you moved here to buy this election. Did you?
Oh my gosh, I tell you what, she continues to try to say negative things about me personally. She continues to try to tear me down. She has put forth no vision for the future, put forth no plans, and not said anything about her lack of experience in business and how she can create jobs, because she can't. And so what I'm focused on is that vision. What I'm focused on is taking that real experience that I've built in Indiana over the last 11 years, take that to Washington to make a real difference, to get us the results that we expect and demand.
She's a professor at a business school. Mm-hmm. You think she's qualified to be a professor at a business school? You say she doesn't have any experience in the business sector. You know, she helped run a nonprofit, and she's a professor at a business school. What do you think about that?
Well, I'll tell you what, every day when I call Hoosiers, when I knock on Hoosiers' door, they tell me there's a difference between somebody who's been out creating jobs in Indiana the last 11 years, somebody who has worked hard and labored under the regulatory environment that smothers job creation, somebody that's innovated products, somebody that's created hundreds of opportunities for Americans and Hoosiers. There's a real difference between that and somebody who just talks about it and says they'll figure out how to do it when they get to Washington. I've been doing it for 11 years. She hasn't, and that's the real difference, and that's what's going to inform better policy that gets to better outcomes for Americans.
Does it benefit you more to have Hillary Clinton at the top of the Democratic ticket or to have Donald Trump at the head of the GOP ticket?
Well, I'm focused on my own race. I'm focused on my own message. I'm focused on helping everybody understand that I want to get everybody involved. We deserve a better Washington. We deserve a Washington that understands us. We deserve a Washington that listens to us. We deserve a Washington that genuinely gets results for Americans. And that's what I'm committed to. And that's the message I take door to door. It's the message I take as I make phone calls every single day, because that's the change I want to see in Washington. It's the change Hoosiers want to see in Washington. It's the change Americans want to see in Washington.
Does it benefit you more to have Hillary Clinton at the top of the Democratic ticket or Donald Trump at the top of the GOP ticket? What benefits Trey more when you look at that and you try to figure out how voters are going to come down the aisle?
Well,
does Donald Trump help you having him at the top of the GOP? Does Hillary Clinton help you at the top of the Democrat?
Well, I think what I hear people agreeing on is that Hillary Clinton is not the right choice for president. What I continue to hear is the failed policies that she has put lives at risk abroad and made Americans more unsafe because of her failed policies, and the policies that my opponent continues to stand behind. We have got to get away from a Washington that doesn't understand how regulation crushes jobs. Donald Trump understands that. We've got to get away from a Washington that doesn't understand how they are not enabling opportunities for Americans. And so what I want to do is continue to say how I'm going to be different, how I can bring real change in Washington, how I'm focused on the right issues and how we enable those opportunities and getting results for Americans.
You've said twice, and I've asked you the question, that you're focused on your race, but are you paying attention to these other races that are going on and how the trickle-down effect may help or hurt GOP candidates? And for instance, right now, and we even asked a question that involved, you ended up in part of the answer to it, which was the Evan Bayh situation. Mm-hmm. He has been using his Washington address on documents. Hoosiers aren't quite sure about that, although his poll numbers still seem relatively strong. Mm-hmm. Are you concerned about the fact that his news, are you concerned about the fact that people are still paying attention to that topic and they may say, well, how long has Trey been here? Or is it so completely not connected to you that you can just walk through that and move on to the next topic?
Well, I'll tell you what I think people have an issue with Evan Bayh is not the address. What they have an issue with is the fact that he traded on his political career in order to cash in as a lobbyist. Instead of having the public's interest at heart, he had his own career's interest at heart. He had his own post-politics career at heart the entire time and was focused on how he could get himself in a better position personally. That's what we don't need more of in Washington. What we need is real public service. That's why I've signed a term limits pledge. It's why I believe fundamentally that's what aligns the interest of myself and the people of this district. It says, I believe that we can enact real change, and I want to commit to taking that outside experience to Washington, and then I want to commit to you that my interests are aligned with yours and that I'm going to create the right regulations, the right tax code, the right situation, because that's what I'm going to have to live under instead of living by exception in D.C. for the next 30 years.
Do you intend to debate Shelley Yoder or
we
appear
already
in any
have-
of these forums? Will you do that throughout the fall? Because now we're getting closer to Election Day, and
Absolutely.
now more people are paying attention as we get closer to Labor Day.
I am so excited about the opportunity to show the difference between myself, real business experience, having built businesses in Indiana the last 11 years, and Shelley Yoder, a tax and spend politician embracing Obamacare. So we actually have our first debate scheduled for September 19th up in Greenwood, and we would welcome anybody to show up and talk about those issues, ask questions, because we're going to have that debate, and I'm excited to show the differences between real experience and somebody who says they'll figure it out when they get to Washington.